Hello,
Hello,
that's Elise Keller,
and that's Elizabeth Wight.
and this is
Theology?
Theology. Hey, better this time.
Yeah, we are better
We're
this
gonna
time.
get this down. We're
Maybe,
gonna
yeah.
get it. We're gonna
And Fran, we have a special guest today. Is this Fran?
and
And
special
Fran.
co-host Fran, the
That's
dog,
correct.
the super
Yes,
cute dog. She's got a lot to add, I have a feeling.
she
Uh,
does, always.
Today we are going to talk about our podcast. So we're going to do a little meta podcast because last week we were just giving it a try. We decided to do our first try and see if it worked and if we had good chemistry, which we already knew we did. And it did. It was a first podcast,
And it was fun.
but it was fun. It was good. And we both kind of were like, we're doing this.
Yeah,
We're going to do this.
I think we could do this. I think
I
we
think
could
we
definitely
can.
give it a good try. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we decided before we really got into it, we wanted to give a shot at, just seeing if it worked. So we took on a topic that we thought we could handle, fairly easily. But this week we actually want to tell you a little bit about how we came to be here. So we are going to start with talking a little bit about how we came to this space. And that space that we met is kind of funny. So we met with a group of women over at the Problematic Bible Study. So the Problematic is the Substack page for our friend, and also we're fans of her, Caroline Dooner. Shout out, Caroline. I hope you hear this. She will, right? We'll make her.
Yeah.
So we met over on her Substack in a group, but that Substack is interesting because it wound up in a place talking about faith, but neither of us came there to talk about faith. And it's so important to the context, as you'll hear, to what we're addressing, that we wanted to give you just a little bit of a brief history. So Elise, for starters, I actually don't know the answer to this. How did you come to be following Caroline on Substack?
Yes. So I actually started following Caroline on Instagram, and I found her through a repost of one of my friends in real life, a real life friend, reposted something that she had posted. And I don't even know if Caroline knows, I have never read one of her books. Still, I know I'm a hater. I'm not a supporter. I have to order them. I have to read them. So sorry, Caroline.
You're not a hater. You love her. You just haven't read it. Yeah.
No, I love her so much. So I found Caroline on Instagram first, and it was during 2020. It was during the pandemic, and I saw so much of myself in her and what she was going through and how she was talking about it online and how she was talking. I was kind of weirded out because I was thinking we're very similar. Like we're really similar. And I remember thinking we could be friends. I
So
knew that
funny.
we could be friends. Yeah. And we went through a lot of the same life experiences, which is even like it was just such a coincidence. But anyway, I was following her along and I loved the fact that she was switching sides and changing her opinion, learning things, looking at things, and going a different way and not backing down from it either. Like she had an opinion and she was well researched and well read, and I remember messaging her about certain like different things that she was talking about, and being like, I came across this too. I saw this too. Like I'm so glad to find someone else who was talking about this. And from there, I don't remember our first actual like interaction, but it was in her DMs, and she was starting her, I don't know what she refers to it as, like a, like not a conversion, like a, I don't know, like a reintroduction or whatever. We
Yeah.
both come from similar backgrounds, Catholic to like question mark, I guess.
But her entry into this particular kind of like Christian faith for
Exactly.
this time around, whatever it was. Yeah.
Whatever it was. And it was so, like I said, it was so eerily similar because so I grew up Catholic and I did all of the Catholic things, and my family is still very much Catholic. And, but then I think it's fairly normal that like in your 20s, your faith probably, most people would agree, it just kind of goes on the back burner. Like it's just not, unless your family is like super involved. I mean, I can get into this, but like I had a lot of I don't want to say a lot of boyfriends. That sounds, but the people that I
Or at
dated,
least
yeah,
the
yeah,
popular.
I had a lot of boys chasing me. No, but their families were very involved in this like non-denominational type church. And so that was new to me. Like that was foreign and that was new because obviously I was only used to like a Catholic church. But I never thought like the way me and Caroline have talked about this, and I think I've even told you this. I feel like my brain didn't come online until fairly recently, like until 2020. Like 2020, I had here's the thing, my faith in a lot of things and a lot of man-made things and a lot of institutions, my trust and my faith was completely obliterated, and I had like an moment where I was like, what do I actually believe in? Like
Right.
what, like where do I go from here? Because I've I've dabbled in a lot of new agey things and a lot of I remember going to CCD and telling my mom like, "Well, I'm going to be Buddhist when I grow up." Like
Right.
being 10 years old and being like, "Well, I'm going to be a Buddhist." And she would always say, "You can do whatever you want when you're 18, but for right now you're Catholic." So so and I actually did. I did a lot of research into like the esoteric and the Gnostic gospels and all this hidden knowledge. And that's so attractive. Like it's so, like for me, because I am pretty nerdy, especially when it comes to this sort of stuff, the
You?
supernatural.
No.
Who? You? So I was always really drawn to that side of it. And to me, church was just, it's like your church and your faith, how do I want to put this? Like your church and your faith was kind of the same thing, and I found church very boring. And it wasn't until 2020 when I decided I'm going to read the Bible for the first time.
Oh.
So I'm going to read the
Oh, this is
Bible
parallel. This is not like because of Caroline, that just you guys were just seriously at that stage in your journey at the same time.
at the exact same time.
Yeah,
Like I
okay. That's
found
interesting.
her, right? It's so strange. Like I found her while I was doing the same exact things, and she was hosting these kind of like conversations on her stories, and I was like, oh my god, there's someone else, like there's someone else who's asking these questions, talking about these things. Like I'm not alone out there. And when I started reading the Bible, it was like I said, it was 2020, and I know I've told you that like I had to start with the like I started in the Old Testament and I had to start with the child's version. Like I was so lost, I was so confused, and I remember praying. Like praying's always been a like I've always done that. I've always believed in God. I've
Right.
always believed that we are intelligently designed. I've never like that's never been a question for me, but I was missing like the Jesus part of it. Like he was not in the equation. Like he was at one point I'm sure that I had the thought where he was like as people like, oh well, he was just a really good teacher or like a really good guy or
A
like such,
prophet, right.
yes, like such a good
An
example.
ascended master.
Exactly, like I definitely fell into that at some point, you know, like in my early 20s. So I was missing like the Jesus aspect of it, which is hilarious because it's like, oh, that's the point.
Right.
Like that's the crux, literally.
Right.
So but from there I started like I said, that was 2020. I started reading the Bible, and as I kept reading, I was looking for I needed the facts behind what I was reading. Like I needed to see because I'm thinking these stories are really like fantastical and they're really almost unbelievable, especially in the Old Testament. Like this was so long ago, and how can we trust this, and is this real, and like are these just nice stories or parables, or is it just make believe?
Right.
And I found Wesley Huff. He has his PhD in the New Testament actually, but he has done his studies in Egypt and abroad, and he broke down the Gospels for me and presented evidence that they're real historical believable
Hmm.
facts. And I need that part of it. Or I needed that part of it because, like I said, I understand why people start reading and then close the book and they're like, that's not, like, how could that be?
Right.
So I need the deep dive part of it. But from there, just to fast forward, I think Caroline and I were talking like in our DMs, and I don't remember exactly when did we do the Bible study last fall.
October, yeah.
Okay. I know she came up with the idea, and I know it was like on a whim. I think like
Right.
someone suggested like you should host a Bible study.
Hmm.
And from there, I was like, "Oh, I'll join that." Like I know I'll join because another thing, she's friends with Kara Mosier. Kara, this is a whole other. Hi, Kara. I hope she's watching too. Kara was. I'm sure she doesn't mind me like talking about this, but she was part of an entire like subgroup of people who fell down the rabbit hole of like everything's fake. Like nothing, like everything you see is fake, and we'll leave it there for now. But anyway, I've listened to Kara, I've talked to Kara like separate and apart from Caroline, and just to bring it back, whenever Caroline suggested that I'm going to run this Bible study and it's going to be kind of we're going to follow the Bible recap. I was on my second round of reading the Bible and I thought this is going to be great because it's going to be with, first of all, a bunch of people that I don't know, which is good for me. I tried one Bible study in person here at a local church, and I do really like the church, and I didn't mind the Bible study, but it was very fluffy. That's the word I used. It's very fluffy, very like,
Self-help.
yeah.
You
And
have to spell that.
I don't need that.
Right.
I need the nitty-gritty. I need the facts. I need the deep dives. I need, you know me, we'll get into this. Like, I'm a stir. Like, I love to ask
I'm already
questions.
gonna have to bleep you twice.
I know. Oops.
Oops, it's okay. It's okay.
I love to stir the pot.
Yes, and you're good at it.
And I am good at it. I am good at it. So, anyway, I thought this is going to be great for me because if worse comes to worse, I can just bow out and I won't have to see them on Sunday and someone be like, where were you? Or why aren't you coming anymore, like to the Bible study? So we started the Bible study, and we know, ladies, it was great. It's been great.
Yeah,
Um,
and that part is sort of
yeah,
like that's sort of where this, I mean, what led to this point was sort of
right,
that.
right.
It's
So
so funny that I found it in such a different way that my path to here was so
yes,
different.
I love it. All right, go because we're here.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Also, I guess we'll talk about that. So it's really funny because I did read her books. So again, wow, this podcast is gonna this episode, Caroline, is just gonna be a lot about you. So
Yes, we love
we
Caroline.
do. We're not kidding. We're fans. So I read she's the author of The F It Diet and Tired as F, which is funny. Yes, that is how I found the person who led to this. So I read so my entry was sort of the anti-diet world. And I I read that book. I don't want to say it was 2019 or 2020, and my husband and I both read it. It was actually a really big game changer for me in that way, around that topic.
Sure.
But what's funny about it for me is that I my husband and I both read this, and what's funny, I see this all the time. I thought I would be friends with this woman. I am not that person that
Right.
does that. And I
Yeah.
thought that, and truly, it makes sense.
Because I'm a loner in real life. Like believe it or not, like I'm fairly like I'm a loner. So whenever it's weird to find people that I don't know that like I could be weird with and they could be weird with me, and
Yeah.
I
No,
love
we're all
that.
weirdos. That was a big part. That's been a big selling point for me, that we're a bunch of weirdos. So
Yes.
everybody's a bunch of weirdos. We're just not hiding it from each other. So that was my entry point. But we read it. There were two things I said. One, I think we'd be friends, and two, I think God is after her. and I don't know why. I don't know why. What about it? I need to actually, I want to reread it to see why.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, if something sticks out.
what's funny is it's not just me. I have seen in when she has posted about her path and her faith and coming to that, there are tons of people. I think we have to have her on and ask her at some point, like how many
Yeah.
people who said, I read your book and I was thinking and I've been praying for you. So there's something, the Holy Spirit was moving in some way in there, and also she must have said things that led to that point. You could tell her seeking in there. There's definitely some of her spiritual seeking, but it is not a Christian book. I mean, you can tell that by the name, but also it's just, that's not what it's about.
Right.
And it talks about some of the more new agey stuff, and I sort of just discarded that, but it was all pretty mild. It wasn't much, and it was all pretty general. And I mean, actually, maybe I feel a little bit differently about some of that now, but at the time,
Yeah.
even as a lifelong believer at the time, it didn't really like tick any boxes for me, but I also discard what doesn't work for me. And then I read her next book, Tired as F2, because I liked the first one so much.
Right.
And that's more memoiry almost, and you get some of her stories, and it's still like, oh wow, no, really, 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 God's after her. And again, so many people thought that, so like I didn't get special knowledge or secret knowledge. So many people thought that. And but also my heart really like was, when this is very Christianese, but my heart was burdened to pray for her. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that's because the impact this has had on other people's faith is so big. So the what is interesting, and I do think I've told her this, but the book helped me uncover some like things I was holding on to for me that were related to obsessed with dieting kind of stuff, that related to that, but that led to us like it was a domino effect after that. I realized that my relationship with food and dieting was really unhealthy, and I had already kind of knew that, but all of a sudden it's a solution. Like it was like, oh no, that's done. You're done.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
once you read that problem, if you take it to heart, completely goes away.
Wow.
And we put it into place with our whole family. I have a daughter who's a dancer. I really didn't want her. That's how I got a really bad relationship with food from that period.
Yes.
And so that's how we decided, this is how we're going to live. This is how we're going to relate to food in this house. And like we're not getting into
I
diet
love
stuff.
that.
So it was really helpful, but it led to therapy, which led to me, my almost sort of deconstruction and reconstruction of my faith. There's more to that. That'll come out over time. But
Right.
actually, it was a real tipping point for me when I think back about it. So really, I think I was following her. I was definitely following her because of that. When she started posting and stuff, also on Instagram, about like faith and being Jesus curious or whatever she's in her
Right. Yeah.
situation, I was like, And so I followed her and I listened to her podcast. So I followed her on Substack, but actually the a big tipping point for me, another one, was listening to her podcast where she interviewed Kara, that you
Yeah.
mentioned, whom I don't
Yeah.
know, except I mean, I follow her
Right.
on Instagram and stuff, but
Yeah.
but I and her talking about really how much the new age and some of these things are really pervasive, and how they're how dangerous they really are, and how it's real. And this is all stuff I knew. So I grew up with a charismatic background, so I very much believe and understand that the supernatural world is alive and is real. It's
Right.
alive. It's happening. It's going on. I've experienced it. So I knew that, but I don't think I'd taken to heart how serious some of it is. And I don't know if it's because I'm from California and I've done yoga since I was 14 years old, and
Right.
that's the world I'm in. A lot
Sure.
of it is the wellness world, but I had a lot of the ideas, that sort of Gnostic ideas and New Age ideas that have seeped into the New Age and the wellness industry specifically, had
Yes.
started to seep into me, and my discernment had been tuned down.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think it was tuned down because I was in a church that was a wonderful church, but maybe wasn't like the right church for me. And
Hmm.
then I stopped during COVID when they stopped having. I just kind of stopped. It was my opportunity. I don't want to say opportunity, but it was sort of like, okay, we're going to take this time to phase out. And so those things. I don't want to say it was a deconstruction at all. It was like I
It was a deep dive.
I took apart a broken, like a sort of broken immature faith, and that deconstructed, but underneath it wasn't a lack of faith. It was a more mature faith. It was
Yeah.
a more mature faith and more understanding, and also a lot of conviction,
Yeah,
discernment, conviction that I think comes with spiritual maturity. But I needed to hear someone say that. So it was also, well, I sort of I've taken the angle in this group of sort of, sometimes I tend to be the answerer a lot of times of questions,
right,
but I, and that's because I'm from a very theology driven family. We talked about the deep
yeah,
theology growing up. My
right.
brothers are both like really into it, and my parents. So it was just a part of these deep conversations were always, I joke that I grew up in a Socratic household.
Yes.
You too, right?
It's just, it's
Yeah.
like law school where you have to be able to argue, and
Yeah.
that's I think where you and I really get along, because my family is very much the same way. We're very up in each other's business, and we have these very deep conversations all the time, and I don't do surface level very well. So yeah, I get that. It's like you got to argue your point and make a point, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it just was this constant discussion. That was how we related to each other, is discussing things. And so that was really good for my spiritual development. But frankly, it was growing weaker. It was growing lukewarm and weaker. And so at the same time, I started to go, but I know there's more to it. And I had done a deep dive sort of into consciousness, which led me to near death experiences, which seems like that would be kind of going away from Christian faith. But I was reconciling it, right,
Yeah.
with these things. And because we don't have to go too much into that, but so it was sort of starting to take me a different direction. That's when I found my church at the same right around the same time I listened to Kara's interview on there, and this was like last summer. And
Yeah.
then, of course, so then she had her Substack, and I followed her, and then we get to this point where now she's starting this. Do you guys want to talk about the Bible? It was really so
Right.
simple, where it was just, we're gonna do, and I love that it was the Bible recap. So it wasn't this, big effort to put this together. The reading plan's already done, the recap is already done. Tyler
Exactly.
Cobble is so good, and what
Yeah.
she's really good at summarizing it and getting to the heart of
Yep.
it. And but then this group that was attracted because of Caroline's background, and I think it's expanded, but a lot of the people in there had a very new agey background.
Exactly.
That a lot of the women that were attracted to this
Yes.
specific, like reading through the New Testament and the Bible, and then
Yes.
that turned out, reading through it together ended up being such a beautiful experience. So which even more like set the stage for what we're doing. So do you want to talk a little bit about your experience in the New Testament portion of the Bible study?
Yeah. So in the New Testament, I've read the New Testament before, but in pieces. And of course, whenever you go to church, you get bits and pieces of it, but never consecutively like this, and never in, I like to call it like a homework style. And I do really well with that. I do really well, like, because of I freelance for work. So I'm really regimented because I have to be. Again, like, we're very similar in that way. And so I like to have my own schedule, and I like to be able to like make my own schedule, but I do well in that setting. So I loved that it was laid out for you. And then we had a forum to go to, and we were able to talk about it. And I loved hearing other people's, where they were coming from and what they were picking up when they were reading it. And from there,
Well, and
the
do you
new,
want to explain how we were discuss how where this discussion was going on?
you mean on Substack
Yeah,
or?
about how it was in the comments and the video kind of thing.
Yes, so like once a week, which I miss our once a weeks.
Me
I really
too.
do.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad we can do this. We can have this once a week and maybe fill that void, because I loved our once a week. I thought that I was not going to participate all that much. Like, I started out by being like, well, if I don't like it, I could ditch. Like,
Right.
that's where my mindset was. Like, I could just go and like show
You had
up.
an escape hatch.
Yeah,
I
and like
love an
see
escape
how.
hatch.
Yeah. So anyway, we had our once a week Zooms, and it was great to be able to see everyone. And then every day, like, we had a prompt and we could go through the reading. And through that, like I said, I like homework and I like deep diving, and this is something Caroline and Carol will both get. Like, put me down a rabbit hole. I love to find connections and patterns and whatever. And the Bible's full of that. And I didn't know. I didn't know that. I did not know,
Right.
which I know sounds so like, how could you not know? But from there, the New Testament readings had so many connections to the Old Testament, and and I was trying very hard to like reconcile them, because I also had personally, I've gone through the whole like, oh, well, the God of the Old Testament was different than God of the New Testament. Like I fell down that rabbit hole for a while. And it's a really good, I think it's a good test of faith to do something like this and to really put in the research and like and see the different dogmas too of like what this church believes and why these people disagree, and then just personally like how people are interpreting it. And from there, everyone knows, of course, I'm going to mention him. I found Michael Heiser, Dr.
Right?
Michael Heiser, and he's passed away. And I'm so upset that I never got to see him talk in person. Wonderful guy. He made so many great revelations to me through the Old Testament. He's an Old Testament scholar. If anyone's listening, I highly recommend you find him on any platform and listen to him. But he explained the Old Testament in a way that I understood, and then was able to make the connections of why the New Testament was so important, and like why this whole story is so important. That was a, it's like, again, I feel like you go through this period where you're like, yeah, like who cares? Like it's just a story. It's just a story.
Well, Michael Heiser does such a good job of not only addressing the unseen realm, but also contextualizing the Bible. So
Yes.
giving us the ancient
Yes.
context of the Bible suddenly opened up so many doors for me. As you know,
Yes.
we have different levels of interest in that, but maybe or
Right.
different levels of passion.
Right.
But I also read Unseen Realm. I actually read years ago, and I
Yeah.
reread it in the last year again, actually twice, I think, because
Yeah.
it's there's so rich. There's so much.
There's so
So yeah,
much. I know.
the contextualizing is important, and for it makes sense for you that that's what you were doing. Is you were
And
really
that's the thing that I really I it's just a lack of maturity. It's like the Bible was written for us, but not to us.
mhm.
Do I have that backwards? No, I'm good. But it was written. It was written in a certain time, in a certain culture, and that's really important to keep in mind when you're reading it. And I do think, without going into too much detail, I do think time is cyclical, and I do think we do have cycles in life, and I do think it's applicable in any time period. But it was written by very specific people, and you have to take that into consideration. And it's something that I just never did. It was like, oh, these are just old stories. Like that was my framework with it, you know?
But there are what you're saying. There are the Bible doesn't just have it's the same story told again and again on a different scale, and we have
Exactly.
continued to have that, and that's I think it's because human nature is what it is. We are
Yeah.
created, so we do have these patterns.
Yes.
Our brokenness and our goodness follow similar patterns. And God is sort of expanding the story to encompass more people than just the Israelites. But first
Agreed.
with the family, and then the tribes, and then the nation, and now all of us in the world. So the cycle does repeat, and we're still seeing versions of it. So that's why it was for a time, it's contextual, has a context for all of it and an application, but it wasn't written about us. And so that's
Absolutely.
like it wasn't. We're not the story. Wasn't
We're
about
not
us.
the main characters, and
Right.
we love to be
Want
the
to
main
be? Yeah.
character. Yeah, we always do. And I think too, like my thing is, um, I grew up in a very spiritual household, I guess you could say. Like I'm just gonna leave this as a breadcrumb, but the house I grew up in was haunted, and we can talk about that at a later time. And I know some people will be like, "That's not true," but my grandparents were from the old country, and they came from at one time it was a very pagan esque area, and then it was very, very Catholic, but they
Yeah,
had people
haunted, infested.
yes,
There's a way to align that pretty well with with a Christian worldview that's
thing.
not heterodox, but
Exactly. I was
but that definitely perceives is that something that we would interpret as haunted in the horror movie sense, but we know there's a spiritual reality.
exactly, and I think it's sanitized a lot, and it's kind of written off, and it's kind of like, oh, don't go there, or don't talk about that, or don't ask those questions, when that's the whole thing. The whole thing is, I mean, demons recognize Jesus right away. And um I lost my train of thought there, but it's we're the scripture where we're not fighting against flesh and blood, like that stuck out to me I know that's obviously a really well-known scripture, but reading it, it made and makes so much sense because the whole story is very supernatural. Like again, we believe in a virgin birth
Right.
of God, and then he died and resurrected. Like that's our
Yeah, but
belief.
then, but you know, but a blessing or a curse is a bridge too far. Like why,
Exactly.
like why
And
would you
that's what I'm
throw
saying.
it
Like
away?
we try very hard in the West, like in this very advanced, we're so advanced and we're so smart and we have to have things in all of these little boxes and it has to be very black and white, and we're missing it. Like I think that I just read something that your average Christian is actually a poor person of color in Africa. That's
Yeah,
your average Christian, and they're experiencing things that we are not.
it's
We're
not a
not.
middle class white American who can rely entirely on science.
Exactly. And so this, yeah, this what we're doing in this like where we are now, it's just so I think it's just I don't know, it's important. It's important to look at that side of it and not write it off because that's the whole thing. Like the whole thing is supernatural. That's what we claim to believe. It's
Right.
mystical.
It's
It's a
mystical.
mystical, yeah.
And I want to, so I want to, after I want to circle back to that because you really led well into sort of why we're some of the, or some of our view, like our
Right,
angle towards coming to this.
right.
I will, a little bit more just about how we got to this point.
Yeah.
Like this led, well, I should back up a little bit more actually. So we're going through this, I don't even remember how. I just thought I have certainly read, I know for certain I've read the whole Bible at some point, right? Just, I've read all of it. I know I've read every book. I've done a lot of really deep Bible studies. Okay, the deep dive thing. This is a little, not rabbit trail, but it's a tangent. It'll be a
Yeah.
short trail. But girl, I know you have not done any Beth Moore studies. I
Yeah,
want to
I
do I want to do a Beth Moore study on my Substack and
okay.
host it and do the
Yeah.
videos because it is like line by line what every word means. Every place else it's in the scripture. She is a biblical scholar. It's
Yeah.
not. This is not like, oh, but she has a couple that are more self-helpy, but some of them, the Daniel study, some of them are like, it's like
Cool.
several hours of homework a week, several
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
And I just think I want to do that after we're done with the Old Testament
Yeah.
because that's so much to do at the same time. I guess that I signed up. I'm just not sure why. I thought, okay, well, I've done this, but I love the idea of doing it consecutively. There's like a Facebook group that does this that I attempted 2 years in a row to read through chronologically through or it's not chronologically, but you read through the Bible in a year.
Okay.
And it's, and there are different studies. There are also like daily sort of recaps and there's discussion in the Facebook group, but for whatever reason, I didn't stick with it either time. And I think it's because of the app, the Bible app, because you can literally check off today. I don't have to go. You had to go like look up each one, and then I had to go find it in my Bible, which is great. But I'm more likely to do it if it's easier. It's
Yes.
like
Yep.
I know I'm more likely to do it. So removing all the steps, I don't have to look it up. I open an app, I go to my plan, I click the things, and then her recap. So for the Old Testament, New Testament, I often didn't listen to the recaps. I
Same.
just didn't, I wasn't having the time. I don't think I've missed any. I sort of I'm doing them in batches now with the Old Testament
Yeah.
because they're short. The recaps are short. So I'll kind of listen to a week at once when I'm on a long
Yeah.
walk rather than
Yeah.
every day, which has been easier. But because they're really good, and I think I missed out on some not doing that the first time,
Yeah.
but I gave it what I had. But we also had we had these, yeah, like you said, the comments on the Substack where we could go discuss each day's readings because Caroline was posting it and
Which I
hosting.
love. Yeah.
So also, this is another thing we want to, if you are not a part of it, it's a different thing going on right now. It's a book club, but on Caroline's Substack, which is called Problematic, I lost it for a second, which this time, by the way, I will link that. I will do show notes. I forgot last time. I owe you some notes from last time and from this time. So we'll get there. We'll definitely connect you to The Unseen Realm. We'll put information on that book since we talked about it. But also the book I mentioned last week, which was that Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools. Several questions I've had about that. That's by Tyler Staton, but I'll put that in the show notes as well as a link to this, because if you want to get in on that conversation, and right now we're reading Mere Christianity, and I know she has more plans in the future, then please, like, it's really, really good. This has been so helpful. We're on a new cohort of people doing a little
Yeah.
bit more, but that Bible study, we also did these Zooms weekly, and I ended up, I don't, answering a lot of questions, I guess. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Because
don't
I
know.
feel you're definitely more seasoned. Is
Yeah.
that the right word? And everyone,
Are
like,
you calling me old, Elise? I'm 10 years older than Elise, roughly, so I'm comparatively old. So,
no, but I feel like a lot of her, just because of her audience, did come, like you said, they came from a new agey background or just some sort of like loose Christian type
and
background.
truly, so for whatever reason, I ended up answering a lot of questions. And then right in the beginning of this, a week after we launched, because I think we launched October 1st, that feels right. And if you
That does sound right.
listening to this in the future, this is 2024, but we started in 2023, and October 7th, 2023 was a week after we started. So it
Yeah,
was roughly a week after we started. So that was, we came together after this. There's something really big happening. We have this group of people, and it connected us really fast. It was such a terror. There was just such this like gut wrenching thing going on that a lot of us wanted to do something. We wanted to pray. We wanted to fast and pray. So a couple of us brought it up. I'm not sure, and folks were like, I'm not sure about this. Like, what is it? So I thought, okay, I'm just going to start a little Substack so I can talk about fasting and prayer, and we can start like a sort of subgroup discussion over
right.
there. And then another topic would come up, and maybe if I would answer it on the Zoom call, or I'd answer it in the questions, but then we'd get into, I'd see this pattern of we bring this topic comes up again and again, and I think, okay, I should write about this. Like I'm going to write about it, and I haven't done a ton yet. This has been pretty new. In fact, this kind of leads to that point. That's sort of how I ended up doing this, and it's not like it's funny to think it's less work. It is for me.
Yeah.
I between my job and then my side job doing, I'm a branding consultant and a graphic designer, and then I design merchandise. I have all kinds of little side hustles kind of going on, and I have 3 kids, and
A
so
jack of all trades.
yeah, master of none. So we I I had all these topics that I wanted to do deeper and deeper dives on that needed a lot of research, but I would find a lot of my writing, I'm a grant writer. So, and I'm a technical writer, but the format of writing, newslettery, article-y, I've done for sure, but it just takes so much more time to edit and to have a product. And I thought it would be so great if I could just talk about, if I could
Right.
talk, because a
Yes.
lot of what I want to do is noodle. I want to try out ideas. I want to do like the juicy thought experiments, which we'll get into this more, but it didn't seem like something that I had the capacity to do in the depth that I wanted, in something where I had to write it and have it make sense and be edited. And if only I could just write like I speak, I could sit down and bang it out. I can't.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just
Because
I
it's a nice like ending point and you need to come to like some sort of conclusion. And that's obviously we're very forward with that. We don't have a ton of like like
yeah, we're
this
not doing
is
conclude. Yeah,
yeah, like this is right and like listen to what we have to say. It's a lot of just this back and forth.
right. So I just thought I can't. I need to do this, and I originally I'll be honest. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start a podcast, and but how am I gonna do it? Like how am I
So
gonna do this? Like I
yeah,
can't just do it. Like I don't want to, and you don't just want one person. And we're already doing a podcast. You and I, we have these messages going back and forth where we're sitting.
right.
At this point now, we've gotten into it. We've realized that like we both. I don't remember how we started having a conversation together
Yeah.
off like separately, but we did
Yeah.
with a lot of people. I mean, I've made it. We've made a ton of friends in this group, and but we started sending back these really long messages, and I noticed that whenever I'm like, you know what I've been thinking? I've been thinking about this topic. And I'll tell you, and you'll go, yeah, and you know what? I read this thing about it, and I saw this, and there's this video, and guess what else? And you've also thought about it in depth.
Yes.
So we had so much fun, and I was thinking, okay, I don't need to do this by myself. Like I don't have to do everything alone. Like I can. So I thought, I thought I'd have guests. My plan was to have each of the ladies on in the group, and we're still going to do that. It was
Yeah.
still the plan, and other people too. But I thought, oh, this will be more fun, and it's for sure this will be better than it would be if it was just me. So I asked you, and why did you say yes, Elise? Why did you say yes?
Why did I say yes? I I I feel like I know I've talked about this with Caroline, I've talked about this with you, but I like to call it my 3D life. In my 3D life, I don't have a lot of people to talk about these things with and to get into the nitty gritty and just even bounce ideas off of and have them come back with something that will make me think even more or give me something to chew on or even change my perspective on something. I don't have that in my day to day. Me and my brother are very, very close and we get into it a lot again, like very, it's very, we get deep and that's great, but it's not the same where like during the day I'm sending him a 7-minute podcast of like, did you read this? And like, how does this fit in? It's not, it's
Yeah, I've
not
got
like
two
that.
brothers, and we love each other very much, and we're in
Yes.
constant contact. But I would not send. I wouldn't. They would not. It wouldn't go over so
Yeah,
great.
no, it won't go over well. Yeah, and so anyway, so whenever you presented me with this idea and you told me the name of it, and I'm not joking you, like you told me the name, and I got chills. I was like, this is gonna be so cool. And I thought you were just telling me, like I thought you were just like, this is my idea, and like I want to do this. And I was like, girl, yes, like you can do this. And if I think I said if you ever want someone to just word vomit all over with no point, let me know. I would be glad. And you were like, no, like, do you want to do
Oh,
this?
with
And I'm
me,
like, okay, yeah.
be
I
my
think
co-host.
yes, yes. And I'm very honored and I feel very touched that, you even presented this idea to me because it's something that I feel like I need and it's just growing even who I am as a person and how I look at things. And that has been a progress for the past 4 years, like I said, but this specifically, like these deep dives and these topics, they're big. Like they're really big ideas. I mean, they're the same as like, well, why are we here and what does it mean to be human? Like these are huge ideas. And so to do it in this sort of format, in this sort of like informal, just bouncing ideas off of each other, not really coming to any conclusive like evidence unless there obviously is something that we can
Sometimes there
point
is, right, right.
exactly. It's it's iron sharpening iron, like that's how, I don't know, that's how I'm looking at
Yes,
it.
I
Yeah.
love that. Well, the thing is that if that's all this is, that was kind of my thinking. We're doing this already, and if all this is it's it's you and me, and then our friends from
Yeah.
problematic come on and talk
Great.
to us and listen to us. It's for them. It'd be super. I'm not gonna lie. It's super cool when other people find us and listen. And same thing with my
Yeah.
Substack. I wrote it for them, but other people show up. That's
Right.
great. But we love this group of ladies. There's like something magic. There's something really beautiful that happened with this group. The questions are phenomenal, and I I like that these are questions. So there are always going to be questions that people
Right.
ask. It's like, who wrote this book of the Bible or who did this? Sure, there are
They're
answers,
actual answers. Yeah.
but I feel like when people ask questions that are tough questions, that are deep questions, I even have examples that a lot of time the answer is, just take it on faith. Like God is good, and we know that, and that's okay. But one time, actually not in our problematic study, but a friend that's in a very similar path right now as a lot of
Yeah.
those ladies, texted me a question about early in the Old Testament. It was about something during Job, and I was at church at a small group, and I read it to an older woman at church just because it was coming up. I said, "Oh, this is cute.
Sure.
This is this question. I'm going to answer it." And she said, "Oh, just tell her, just keep reading. Just keep reading. Don't worry about it. Just keep reading." And I thought that totally makes sense. And for a Christian, that's good advice for sure. She's not a Christian. She doesn't have to. There's no reason for her to
There's no
keep reading.
commitment there. Yeah.
I want to answer that question. And I don't necessarily, well, I did, there was an answer to this one. That was also the thing. There was an answer. Like it was, to me, there was a clear answer. So I thought, well, this isn't that hard. But the, even when there's not a clear answer, there are ways to think about things. And it gets into me, this is based on the kinds of doubts I had, the kind of issues I've had. And we're going to get into those. I think there's probably not a single topic that isn't going to touch on one of my existential crises that I've
Right.
had in my years of faith. So we would get these topics and they're so deep and they don't have answers. So one of the things that comes up a lot when we were in the first round, because we were doing the New Testament, was atonement theory. And my
Right.
big thing was, what atonement theory do you subscribe to, was asked to me, and I said none. None. That is
Right.
a great academic question, but
Yeah.
I don't want to be dismissive. It's important, but I just think that I would like to explore sort of all of them. It's not just one thing. I want to hold these things loosely. If it's not very, very clear in the Bible, I think
Yes.
coming up with a concrete theory that you are married to forever and
Right.
ever is, I can't say it's wrong. I don't know, but it doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't feel comfortable. It's not the way my brain works.
Exactly. And I
I,
I have a similar I've I've thought about this and I'm really grateful for this actually. Like coming from a background and where I am now, um I love that I don't want to say I don't have any biases because that's not true. I mean, obviously everyone does, but I'm coming from a place of genuinely asking questions and genuinely seeking, and it's broadened my faith. Like it's real. Like when I very first started in 2020, when I started reading the Bible, there was a non-denominational church that I found in Washington State, and the pastor there, he did the Bible like word for word, line by line, and his he broke it. It was a very like I don't want to call him fluffy because he wasn't. Like he does talk about like the Greek and the Hebrew and where it comes from, and I really really appreciated that. And then from there I found another pastor who was reformed, and I didn't even know what that meant, but
right.
he taught and he knew the Bible inside. He does know the Bible inside and out, and I have so much respect for him. And he's in Phoenix, and I would love to go to his church, and I didn't even know what that meant. And that's a good thing because I didn't come into it with like some sort of, oh, I'm not going to believe anything you say because you are a certain, you know what I mean, like you have a certain outlook or whatever. So to pull things from different denominations or to pull things from different sources, I think is really helpful in growing your faith. Like you don't have to subscribe to this exact like, okay, this is exactly what to believe. And if you end up there, sure, I think I think that's great, and I think a lot of people obviously do. But this is really what this is what gets your brain working, and this is wrestling. Like this is
Right.
what it is.
So there are the core things that they don't really, we'll discuss them because they bear discussing because they're good, but they're clear. The fact that Jesus died for our sins and that we have eternal life in the kingdom of heaven. Now we can add like, but what is the kingdom? What is eternity? What is life? We can pick apart all those things, but we know
Yeah,
it's true. We're not we're not here to unpack that. We're not here to be like, is the Bible really authoritative? Yes, that's all
right,
right. It is.
right,
But which version? Which translation?
exactly.
What is this? Which word does this mean? Like we don't. So we're not here to say. First of all, we can't give a lot of answers because the reason that there's a second ology is because we're not theologians. We are people who think about, study theology, right? Like we're not just studying theo. We're studying theology. We do that, but not experts. And I guess that means that we're just, it's a lot of going to be discussion. We talked about thought experiments. You mentioned that on the last one, and I thought that was such a good way to explain it.
Yeah,
So, and then two things come to mind about this that like kind of explain, I suppose, what to expect, what our angle is. One is such a great question. Last week, our friend Claire, we took her question, and it was about prayer and intercessory prayer and a couple other questions. And we discussed it, but we did not answer it. And it was very unsatisfactory, I think, the answer. But the thing is that there is no, I've for years I've been studying this. I've read every book. I know I referenced a book last time that does have a lot of good things to say, but did it solve this? Did it clear up all these like mysteries for me? No. If no one in thousands of years has come up with a satisfactory answer
right.
everyone can agree on, and that is orthodox and that is right, like
right,
we're not going to,
right.
but we are weirdos, and we might have a way to think about it. So talking about it, discussing it, maybe give you a way to think about it that will resonate, that will click with you. Just know that we're not gospel writers. We're not, we don't want to. The worst thing I can imagine is damaging someone's faith, but I don't think that's what this does. I find that people will say, folks exposing abuse in churches. And they'll say, don't do that. Don't expose Christianity as something bad. You might drive people away. I don't believe that. You expose that because it doesn't belong in the church. And if we don't stand up to it, then we're saying it's okay.
Agreed. Yeah.
And we want to tell people, no, that's not what the church is.
Right.
In the same way, bringing up tough questions doesn't negate anything. It's saying, I don't think it's a mistake to dive deep. I think that is well, it's not a very Protestant thing to say, like, don't worry about it, don't think about it too much, just accept it, don't think about it too
Right.
much. For me, it promotes my faith. I have to be able to rationally, logically believe something.
Agreed.
There are leaps of faith,
Yes.
obviously, but there are some things that are so hard to reconcile, that are so weird and bizarre, that if I can't come up with some explanation that I can fathom, I don't have to know what's right, but I know if there is a possible explanation, I can fathom that one exists, then I can accept the mystery. But
Yeah.
I need to be able to fathom some sort of answer. So a lot of it is going to be that, I think, is how I think about it is different. So for instance, about prayer, we there are a few things. We're not going to come to conclusions, but we do have opinions.
Yeah.
And however, I think sometimes we might come to answers through discussion, or we might come to the answer to you
Definitely.
that
Or
comes up.
else I think it sparks interest for the other person to go and think about, like, oh, that does, they said something that maybe I didn't think of before. Or maybe it's like, no, I completely disagree with that, and here's why. And I think that's good. I always think discourse is good.
Well, it also forces you to decide, to think about what you actually believe. Like,
And
what?
that's exactly, like, coming from that place, like, I feel so strongly about this because that's exactly where I was. Like, I remember where I was and like what I was doing when I had my oh bleep moment. And
Self-belief, very good.
yeah, yeah. I remember what I was doing, and I just, like, it was such a because it was such a big moment. It was like, oh wow, okay, like, you do have to figure out, like, what do you believe in, and like, where does your allegiance lie, and where does that put you in a hierarchy of things. And for your worldview to, like, come crashing down or just be dismantled, it leaves you like, oh, well, what does this mean? Then what does this mean for me? And like, what does this mean for how I look at the world? And so, and that was, talk about a tangent. But yeah,
No,
I
but
just,
that's actually the point. We're talking about how we talked about sort of how Michael Heiser contextualized this for the time in the Bible. We're also contextualizing it in our own way. So we're giving it form, we're giving it a way to understand it through the lenses we have. So we both have this background. We both read The Unseen Realm, and that was really eye-opening to me, and it was really good. And we're definitely going to talk about this more. But my other angle, and this is so funny, but it's going to come up a lot, and if you went through, in fact, you can watch the videos of our past Bible studies if you're a paid subscriber over on Problematic. But often I would say, I know this is funny, but the way I have a way to think about it is because of science fiction or fantasy. Like, I read all these books, and it's not that that sounds so funny, but there's a lot of world building that goes into that.
yeah.
And again, this is a whole topic I want to deep dive into, but for me, it gives me an imagination for how things might have happened.
Mhm.
So and I think the best example of this is C.S. Lewis wrote Out of the Silent Planet and The Hideous Strength of Paralandria, which is basically the gospel story, how it played out on other planets, in other universes, in other worlds. But it's the gospel story, but the savior, it's Jesus still, but Jesus' name on this planet, when he comes in there, their living form is different.
Is
And
that the book? Does he talk about how every other life form did not rebel or like didn't fall? Is that the same book? Okay, because I'm listening to a podcast and they were talking about this time and what's coming out in our current time, and like all this talk about like UFOs and what does it mean and where does it fit into a biblical paradigm. But they were talking about C.S. Lewis wrote a book, and it was um I guess very similar. It was there are other life forms on other planets. It's just we were the ones that.
So maybe it is because there's other planets, and it's, of course, this is fiction. These are novels, but they are the the idea is that some of them, for the first one for sure that I've read most recently, because I read them, as a child, and I've been rereading, and but now it's been a few years since I did even this round.
Yeah.
It's the worlds are fallen because the
Okay.
Christ has to go there to redeem them. But it is also, but there's this idea. It's so funny to me that people are like, well, how do you explain like aliens and stuff? And it's like, well, if he did it here, he can do it elsewhere, and he can have the whole story, and the story might look different because life, we have a limited idea of what life can even look like. We think life has to be carbon based, and that consciousness has to be electrons firing, like, electrical impulses, like all those things. That is just our limited understanding of consciousness and of life. So it's not hard to take leap. But when you put that story on a different planet, all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, this planet exists, and there are physics of this planet. There are rules of engagement that are endemic to the space, but we don't accept it in our world. That worlds
Right.
are, we think that if God's um excuse me, omniscient, omnipotent, that's the word I'm looking for, omnipotent, that he can just poof anything to existence. And sure, he can, but we pretend that the rules that God created aren't in play. It makes it so much easier for me to grasp not the limitations, but the shape of faith and the shape of God when I look at it sort of separate from the mundaneness. It's such a part of Western culture, especially.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it's a part of my everyday life, that I can see Jesus mentioned and hear Jesus mentioned everywhere, that it's part of pop culture. Thank God for that. But it
Yeah.
can become mundane, and we can start to think we take it for granted. So I guess it's the supernatural. That stuff drives back home that there is a supernatural aspect. We have faith in something mystical. And
Right.
it's easier when you take it out of that space, out of Earth space, but it's no different if it fits in their physics and their world. So that's a big part of the way that I answer things. It's a way I think about things. So sometimes it's very silly, but it's not an answer. It's not an answer. Although I have some ideas that I just found a scripture, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've had a feeling that this thing, and is true. And then I find a scripture, and it's like, oh, it really seems to back it up. But that's not sound biblical
Right.
practice, right? So I don't marry myself to those, but I think this could be possible, and that's enough for me to know this could be possible. It
Yeah.
could be possible that it's all okay. It could be possible that that all pain will be wiped away. It could be possible that they're actually all the suffering. God doesn't allow suffering because in the end the suffering will be gone. That sort of thing is it's not a definitive answer. I don't know for sure, but it's enough for me to keep going
Exactly.
another day because I know God is good and I know Jesus is good.
Right.
That,
Exactly.
that check out? Does that make sense? Where like why that's my angle for wanting to do this?
Yeah. No, I completely get that. I get that. It makes sense
And
to
so
me.
your worldview on this and your like angle at approaching these, well, first of all, is your questions, which the questions just come from your very brilliant mind, but also it's sort of it's you have this really supernatural emphasis on your angle at coming from this, right?
Right. And I feel like I come from like I love a conspiracy. I love a conspiratorial angle on everything, and my a lot of my big thing is that we've been very sanitized here in the West, and it seems like the world will program us to think that anything fanciful or esoteric is make believe, like it's not true and it can be explained away. And you can fit it into a biblical worldview. And I like that's a new world for me because there were so many big questions. And then it's like, well, you can't explain it in a Christian worldview, but you can, like, you actually can. And it's just, again, like, I had to actually open the book. Like, I had to do the homework. I had to do the homework. And Um, yeah, I think the supernatural side of it is such a obviously it's such a huge part of this story, but I think it's just a huge part of the world. And there's a I think especially now, like in this time that we are living in, with all of the talk of the UAPs and the UFOs and the aliens and CERN and what are they opening? I mean, they've like their official statement is we don't know. And you know what I mean? Like those are real things. Those are real. We've had congressional meetings about these sorts of things, and I don't know exactly what that means, but finally, I feel secure in knowing that God really is and was the creator, so he's got it. Like it's I don't have to be terrified of that. I don't have to wonder like, well, then what does that mean? Does that mean that God doesn't know what's going on or like doesn't have any control over this? Um so I don't I don't know. Like I come from a like I said, like a esoteric kind of background, like that stuff really fascinates me, but I think you don't have to worship those things and you don't have to yeah, like you don't have to explain it in that way. There actually are answers to it and they reflect a Christian worldview. Like at the end of every rabbit hole, this is really where it got me. Like
Yeah.
you almost don't want to believe it. You don't want to like you actually don't. You don't want to believe it, but at the end of every rabbit hole is Jesus. Like
That is exactly it. So that's the same path. I when I really
sure.
thought I'm going to go down to this consciousness and I'm going to figure out once and for all. I'm going to figure out once and for all, me
Right.
first, the first person, how this works and how is consciousness, is our soul, is it really just a function of our brain?
Right.
And is this really just all there is?
Yeah.
And no, the bottom at the bottom of that hole was like, I can't, it's all roads lead to all roads lead to home, right? All roads lead to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that has been the same experience. And so I think it's not dangerous to do. I mean, we're going to be careful. We're going to have guardrails. But the thing that is funny is that the group of women, now it's broader, but in the beginning it was a lot of folks with a very like new age or new age adjacent background.
Right.
Big sirens in the background. I don't know if that's going to be loud. Uh,
No, you're
but I thought part of the reason that we dove in and the questions were in the first week, it's like, okay, here are some very basic questions about the Bible. Who's this? Who's that? And the next week it's like atonement theory. And I'm like, oh, we're just going all the way and eschatology and we're just gonna go. And at first my lifetime of conditioning about this was like, well, let's stick with the milk and then we'll move to the meat. These are women who already know that the supernatural world exists. I use this term. It's not that there's spiritual maturity, Christian maturity, but there's spiritual awareness. There was a
yes.
great deal of spiritual awareness because the Bible does not tell us don't talk to mediums because they're not real. Don't try to talk to the dead because you can't. Don't try to get answers from the stars because it doesn't work. It's don't do it because it's bad.
Right.
It's possible, but it's
Yeah.
not for you. And
Yeah.
it's not for us. It's
Right.
there's a time when uh biblically they're using the I don't know how to say the Urim and the Thummim to make decisions, right? To
Yes.
like make decisions of casting
Yes.
lots. We don't
Yes.
do that. Like we don't do
No.
that. That is not okay. But it's not because it's not real. It's because God said not to. He
Exactly.
didn't tell
And
us
the
not to do it because it doesn't work. He told it to us because you will open yourself up to deception because what you're talking to, you're not talking to your dead relative probably.
right. You don't always know what you're talking to. You
Yeah,
don't always know what you're channeling, and you don't like you take it all the way back to the Tower of Babel. Like he was like, "No, I will come down to you. Like you don't make it up to me. I will come down to you." It's for him. Like it's for him to use these tools. And it's again like we're not the main characters, but we love to be, and to we love to use these things and think and kind of explain it away. And it's that's exactly it. Like so many of these women have had spiritual what's the word I want to
you're not
use?
coming from a sanitized faith background.
No, because
You,
we
you've said that
dabbled
a
in
couple times, and
it.
it's such a good way to say it. Our faith is so sanitized in the modern Western church. I don't want to say it Christianity as a whole, but in the modern Western
Yeah,
church,
right.
it's like none of this is real. There's no such thing as that. It's that's not it.
That's not it. That's not it. And like I
And
said,
also, I actually don't. Charismatics don't believe that. So people will blame that on charismatics in the evangelical movement. And I have to tell you, that's not true because I never grew up thinking that. I was always taught, don't do it because it's
and that's
dangerous.
how Catholics are. I mean,
Yeah,
like that's a big thing, and especially coming from an Italian Catholic family, like we got a lot of superstitions, and I still, we still do, and it's not because they're fake, it's because they are true. Like you're messing with things that you don't have the capacity to control. And one of the things that like always stuck out to me was even people who were not Christians who were dabbling in new agey occult practices. That's what it is. It's just the occult.
sure. Yeah,
Like
no,
they
that's
would
good.
call,
Let's name it. I love that.
yeah, it is. It's the occult. And I, like I said, I was trying so hard because you're going down these rabbit holes and like you want to get this sort of like secret knowledge, like you want to know the most and whatever. I was looking into becoming a Rosicrucian at one point. Like I was in it, like I was ready to go. And luckily I that didn't go anywhere. And truthfully, like I've never messed with anything. Like Ouija boards were like a big no like in
No,
our household. Again, like
at
very,
my most rebellious, I would have like left a birthday party if they had gotten one out still because I was like, nope, I know this stuff is
no, I know. And
never
but
sign it.
but it's because but
Good on
you
our parents. Can we say that? Thank you,
it's
moms and dads, because
yes, it's true. I know. I can't wait. I can't wait to go home. I'm going home tonight and I can't wait to tell them about this conversation because those were things that were like drilled into me, like you don't mess with these things. However, the world presents it in such a fun and like carefree thing. Like I've seen psychics, I've done mediums, like I've been to parties where there's been, you know what I mean? Like I've done all of these things, and for some reason, even though it's like, okay, well, I was told not to do this, but for some reason, there's some sort of like cognitive dissonance. I don't know what that is, where you're like, well, it's probably okay because like I'm just talking to grandma or whatever. And
right.
then, and you don't know that. You don't know that you're just talking to grandma. And I think the danger really comes like, I'm not one of these people. Like maybe at some point I'll be like this strict Christian, but like astrology and that sort of stuff, I don't know. I don't think okay. I think there definitely can be harm in looking to all of these things as answers and like trying to glean answers from these things. But I don't see like I know my sun sign and my rising sign and my moon sign. Does it mean anything to me? Do I fit those characteristics? Yeah, actually I do. But like it doesn't hold any like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't
So,
do anything.
so that's actually for me. That's part of the danger of it is that
Yeah,
once again, like if you and it, okay, like and we're smart. I'm smart enough to read like a horoscope that is like, okay, that's general. It's like, oh, you're gonna have like something that can
right.
apply to anybody.
Yeah.
So, but like I have seen, I have not engaged with this stuff, and that's because I think, well, so I like act like I'm this like rebellious like anarchist girl, but I don't want to get in trouble with my mom still. I am 41 years old. And
Yeah.
I'm just still like, mommy, I didn't do that. And I can't, because I can't lie. Like I can't do
Yeah.
that's a sin for sure, right? Like so I know so it's like so I don't want to do it for that, but like it's okay. Those are guardrails, right? There's
Right.
um so that's okay. Like I'm honoring my father and mother. That's all right that it protected me. That's what it's there for. Because
Yeah.
I have a good basis, right? But
Right.
I I've thought about it. So my thing is like I can't watch a horror movie, but I'll read the plot synopsis because I'm curious what it came out
Yeah.
with. So I do, it's kind of a similar thing. Like I've never talked to a psychic. I've never done tarot cards. I've never
Yeah.
had my palm read. I've never played with a Ouija board. I'm not kidding. None of it. I
Yeah.
know my sign. I only know my sign because like everybody knows yours.
Right.
Like you can't not know it. I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
the other things though.
Yeah.
Um, and I and I know that if my kids ever text me and ask me what time they were born, I'm gonna
Right.
go, all right. What is that? Have you seen that meme? Like, no, not leave that girl
Yeah.
behind. She's asking Uh,
And
but
it's true. It's so true.
right?
It starts out really innocent like that,
But it's
and then
not because it's not true.
ex-
God says no. The reason we don't
that's
do it is because God says no. And we
that's
can't tell non-believers, don't do it. They don't
right.
have to follow these rules.
No,
They're not
exactly. And
subject to the rules.
Exactly.
but we're
And that's,
subject to the rules. And even
yes.
if we don't like it, even if it's fun
Mhm.
and we wish and we think we don't do it because we're not supposed to, and like
Right.
I kind of trust that God knows what He's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it sure can be true. Like I'm certain that it can, or else why? Yeah,
Absolutely. And because there's
yeah.
even there are these huge astrological events mentioned in the Bible, and things line up with those things because those were his signs to us. He was using them. Like we're not, that's really not for us. And it brings it back to like, well, I want to know more about me, and like where do I, that's where you're trying to find your importance. And that was something really like this whole deep dive into Christianity, and I guess officially being a Christian, or I don't even know, but like just really examining my
Living
faith.
it, practicing it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, this was really important to me because I've always felt kind of like I don't even really know how to put it, but it's like I never really did anything like I'm not super successful. I never really did anything like super big or whatever. And finding my finding my place in the order of things really helped me like chill out and be like, it's okay. Like it's okay that you are not a multimillionaire and you're not like
Don't need to manifest a Lamborghini.
That's exactly it. Like like we were talking the other day. I was making chicken soup, and I was like, I just want to be making chicken soup. That's what I
That's
want to
right.
be doing. And
I
like, if you,
saved that voice memo from you. I just want to make chicken soup, Elizabeth. You know, that's it. Do it. Make your chicken soup, honey.
and even 4 years ago, whenever all of this started, like I was not content making chicken soup. Like I was not content. I am very much like a perfectionist, and I still am. Like that's, I mean, my personality is very much, I'm very type A, and I like things a certain way, and I like to do things, and I like to be in charge and whatever. But there is a sense of like letting go and actually believing finally that it's like the cookie's gonna crumble how it is going to crumble, and it's going to be good. Like it's going to be at the end of it, at the ultimate end, it's going to be fine and good because that's what he said.
So I don't know what song this is, but because I don't know the song, but my mom used to quote this song all the time to us when things got scary. She'd say, we win, hallelujah, we win. I've read the back of the book and we win. And she would like, I know that so
I
well,
love
even
that.
though I don't know the song because she said it so often. That is
Yeah,
like, that's what it means when we're like, we're already victorious in Christ. Like,
right,
atonement theories I'm iffy on, but if I'm gonna marry myself to one, it's gonna be Christus Victor because I think
right.
that's what it's all saying, right? We have God, Jesus has conquered death. But you you pointed out something that was really interesting, and I think that that is actually why, again, why so many of the people that we're like doing this for and that are our friends in this group, they witnessed not only that the supernatural was real, but many of them witnessed the power of Jesus' name because every
Exactly.
psychic knows, every shaman will tell you, you'll hear these stories. And so that was actually really useful for me too. And I know that I heard that come up multiple times in Caroline's podcast, which sent me on like an ex psychic, an ex Wiccan, like whole
Yes,
podcast, like rabbit trail, even though I didn't do all that stuff, because I
that's
thought, wow, these women actually, they are like,
did,
no, the evil is real. And
did these
but
things
it knows the name of like every pagan, everybody of all faiths knows for whatever
for
reason, things get out of
for
hand.
whatever reason.
Use the name of Jesus and it'll go away. Why does that work? It is not
Ex-
magic.
exactly, and that,
Like it works
yeah,
because it's real. And I think if we can't just ignore all that, we have to. So no wonder we're so primed. No wonder these women are so ready to believe because they already have seen him work. They've seen
that's
Jesus
the
work even
thing.
before they believed.
Yes, and you, like you said, like you are familiar with the spirit world because if you're dabbling in it, you've seen it. Like you've seen it work, and you've seen what it can do. And I think it always starts out really good, and then from there it's like,
Like a drug
again,
dealer.
this, yeah,
Get you
that's,
hooked.
yeah, exactly right. And that is how you, I mean, that's how you get yourself involved in things that then you need a way out, and there's only one way out. Like that's the part where it's like, I'm telling you, like when I was like looking in every other way, I'm like, there has to be like someone, like everyone has to have it right, or like trying very, you know what I mean, like trying very hard to look for answers, and it's like, oh, there's only one right answer.
So
It's only
there can only
one.
be, there really can, like,
Really only can be one. And I I don't know. I mean, that again, that could be a whole other conversation, but when when Jesus says like he's the truth, that's it.
I'm about to quote myself, which is weird, but I'm going to quote a tweet that I have once, which is, the truth is a zero sum game and everyone thinks they're winning.
Yes.
So, and they're not. Jesus is the zero sum game. The truth is literally the word, the truth, and the life. That's the truth. And that's the
Yeah.
one that wins and that's victorious. But everybody, but you can't have, certainly two things can be true, right? So, like, yes, my daughter, it just got a great part in a play. Congratulations. She's going to be Alice
Yay.
in Alice in Wonderland, which is so her, if you know.
How exciting. Yeah. I
I
love
know. I'm
it's
so
one of my
excited.
favorite movies.
Yeah, hers too. So it's like her favorite story, her favorite movie. She's
Yep.
been that for like Harvest like 3 times. We
Cool.
had her a couple years ago. We had a merry unbirthday for her, like months after her birthday, so that we
Uh-huh.
could have a themed party. Everybody, it's really cute. I'll show you pictures.
Please.
I'll put pictures in the show notes, folks.
Yeah.
Look at me doing it
Yeah,
again.
please.
So, but one of her friends did not get the role that she wanted, which is really funny because 2 weeks ago they both auditioned for another play, and
Yeah.
her friend got a role in that one, and Fiona didn't even get a role.
Yeah.
But now Fiona got the starring role in this little play, and her friend got kind of like a not so great one. And
Sure.
she's like, I'm having a hard time being happy because of this. And I said, I understand. I'm so empathetic and sweet, but two things can be true. You can be really happy you got that role, and also feel bad for your friend that she didn't and that she
Absolutely.
doesn't feel bad. So two things can be true. I'm not saying they can't. I that comes up for me all the time. It's actually helpful for me, a very black and white thinker, to remember that two things can, but not
Yeah.
always.
Well,
There is
and
a there's an ultimate truth when it comes to like life and death and good and evil. There is an ultimate truth, and I mean,
it goes back to exactly what we were talking about, like the supernatural realm and false gods and things. Like you can conjure things. You can that's true. That
you
is
just
true.
don't want to.
You just don't want your allegiance with that entity. Like
Oh,
I
tell
was
your thing. Say your thing that you and Nick say about the customer service.
the customer service is great on the other end. It really is. Like you can probably right now as I'm sitting here in my living room, probably do some things and get some things out of it. So I think that's true. And I again, this is my angle and I do believe um in little g gods. Like I do believe that those things really do
Elohim.
exactly. And you can worship them and you can do the things that they ask you to do. Our God is Yahweh, obviously not the correct pronunciation, and that's the one that I want to be tied to.
Yeah,
So
one
I have
can worship them. One must not. But you can. It's your
you
choice. That's what free will is. But you must
exactly.
not. You should not. And I don't think people realize that they're worshiping those other gods, though, with some of these activities.
Oh, absolutely. That's
And
the thing. And like I said,
that's
it's
so,
very
no, you don't want that. You don't want that.
right.
Ask some of our friends. You don't want that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't
The
want to do
world
it.
will tell you like, yeah, it's fine and it's fun and but yeah, it's dangerous.
Right. So I think actually we just gave a really good preview because we got down this, we got like into it with this one to
I
explain
know.
kind of
Sorry.
how we're going to approach this. No, do not be sorry because this was good. I think
Yeah.
what we did was, I hope that this kind of makes it clearer to folks that really, I don't know. I would love at some point, like there are questions, maybe we'll probably get more knowledgeable. We have some topics that are going to be like very thoroughly researched and presented and sort of a different format. We have multiple formats, but our original thought was like, you're going to hear the conversations that Elise and I already have. They're,
Yeah.
because they're goofy, and how maybe that sounds arrogant to think you might want to, except that we know that our friends kind of, some of our friends are totally open to it. And so I think that's a kind of like a whole interesting side trip, but I think that you can see how this is faith promoting in the ultimate, right? This is the discussion, and there's going to be as you said, thought experiments, but what I guess there's going to be uncertainty, and there are going to be more questions than answers, but they're
Yes.
all, our intent, our hearts are to point you to Jesus and to point each other to Jesus and to point ourselves to Jesus and those around us. And yeah, I think really that's the only thing that we actually ultimately care about. Everything else is really fun, and we're going to get into it. And and we're going to be wrong sometimes, but
Yes.
we're going to point you to Jesus.
Yeah.
And if
Because
we don't, if
that's
we're
the
not,
point.
please tell us. If we're not, tell us that we're not, right? If we keep this up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I I'm excited. But like I said, Franny's glaring at me. She said it's dinner time. So
Is it dinner time, Franny? Yeah, Franny. Oh, look, she'll keep in the camera. Right. Have a good dinner, Franny.
thank you.
Once again, where you can find us. You can find us now on YouTube,
Yay!
Theologyology. No one had taken that name, fortunately. And currently, we are still available on the Substack app at The Fake Librarian. And we'll figure out what's going to happen with that in the future. But
Yes.
we'll remember to put everything for you in the show notes. Ask us questions if not. And
Yeah, please
yeah,
ask us questions. We love questions.
more
Yeah.
questions. And pretty soon, the next one or the following, we're gonna bring on a guest because it's time to get someone in here and get into it with us.
Love it.
Elise, you're beautiful. I love you.
I love you more.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.